firearms, guns, in the shadows of the night.
So you've decided you want to add a laser to your firearms workshop. Well, then you've probably figured out that that means you specifically need a fiber laser. You've also probably noticed that there is an ungodly amount of gatekeeping of knowledge going on in this space. Starting out with a fiber laser can seem daunting when there are very few settings openly shared, and oftentimes when you do come across some, they're still missing crucial information like what lens size or wattage they're good for, or how many passes to use. Don't even get me started with the "every laser's different and therefore sharing my settings with you would be useless" line. In this playlist of videos, I'm going to tear down those walls and get you all the information you need to get started quickly and without ruining a bunch of expensive gun parts in the process. As this is the first episode in the series, we're going to start with the easiest and fastest, both material and project, color marking PMags. Keep in mind that this is not quite an engraving, as it doesn't have a noticeable depth, but it's still a very cool result, especially when you learn to harness all the various colors a standard non-JPT fiber laser can produce. And I do understand that out of all the settings you might be able to find, these are probably the easiest. But don't worry, as the series continues on, we will tackle simple and complex engraving in aluminum, various steels so you can engrave pistol slides, as well as polymer grip laser stippling, and maybe some more exotic uses like brass and Cerakote work. Many of these skills will be directly embedded into my various build series, but I'll be sure to add them to this playlist too. Like and subscribe to keep up. Lastly, there are a few rules I'll be repeating every episode. 1, this is not an intro into setting up your new laser. There are a million videos which cover that already. Go watch them. We're going to focus solely on applying your already set up fiber laser to firearms uses. 2, I will be teaching all of this on an OhmTech 50-watt compact model, but no part of me can recommend OhmTech or this model with a clear conscience. Get something else. If you want to know why, go watch episode 2. 3, you do not have to have the same wattage, lens size, brand, or anything else as me, besides it being a fiber laser, in order to follow along. I will walk you through the process of taking any settings I share and converting them for use on your laser. While you still may want to tweak them afterwards, what you'll get should be plenty good to go use immediately without fear of ruining parts. 4, as with most of my content, I'm learning this at the same time you are, which means these settings did not come out of my brain. This episode's settings came from ARFCOM user OG1, but every other episode planned owes a huge debt of gratitude to Frag Out Designs for literally opening up his little black book of settings to me so that I can in turn teach you. If, like me, you suck at making vector art, just go buy his. It's amazing and designed specifically for guns. Well, let's dive right in. By hitting PMags with fast, low-power paths, the surface color changes almost as if by magic. By varying the speed, power, line spacing, frequency, number of passes, and scan angle, you can get an array of different colors. But at the end of the day, they're all basic earth tones. Even though there are more hues out there to discover, we're going to discuss 6 that are, in all honesty, likely enough to keep you happy forever. Brown, light brown, gray, light gray, tan, and of course just leaving sections black. I flashed up the settings for each there, so go rewind, grab them, and enter them into Lightburn for later, as our example won't use them all. If you are using a fiber laser that has anything other than 50 watts with a 150mm lens, let's talk about converting those settings for your laser now. There is a piece of freeware made by a friend of the guy that runs the Laser Everything channel called Shark Laser Parameter Converter. It allows you to take a Lightburn or EasyCAD settings library, feed it into the software, tell it the details of my laser, which is 50 watts and 150mm lens, then tell it the details of your laser, and it will spit out a new library file with all the changes you need. Again, tweaking them will allow for improvement, but I've found that that converter does an amazing job, and I'm confident using what it spits out at minimum as a starting point, if not just permanently. When I found these settings on ARFCOM, I actually didn't know what size lens the guy was using. In the post, he mentioned a 110mm lens. he mentioned I think it was like a 175 millimeter lens. And then I have a 150 millimeter lens. So I actually did swatches out of the conversion software, assuming he was using a 110 and I was converting it to my 150. He was using a 175 and I was converting it to my 150. And then I said, well, what would it just look like if I used his settings as is? Assumed he had a 150, I'm a 150. So as you can see, at least for the PMag, they didn't differ too terribly much, but I did find that I liked the vibrancy of the various colors best when I just assumed he was using a 150 just like me, which is odd because he doesn't mention 150. But either way, this is kind of what you can learn from putting test swatches together. You can see what you like best, even if that's not what that person was using. However, like I said, they all got pretty close to one another. This was just my favorite. Feel free to ignore the little pew things. That was actually done with a diode laser like a year ago before I had my fiber laser. So you can do some stuff with a diode laser. It's just not nearly as cool. Okay, let's actually mark something finally. I didn't know what to choose as the vector graphic for this video, so I did what any man-child would do. I'm gonna draw a giant cock on it. It's totally normal, something like 8% of kids do it. It's also great because it's the perfect canvas for multiple colors. For the outside, I'll select the two lines which define my shape I want to fill in and make sure they're assigned to a single layer. I'll make sure that layer is set to use a fill, and then I'll go to my materials library, find my light gray color that I want to use, and assign it to that layer. And then follow the same steps to apply my light brown settings to the neck, gray to the beak and eyes, and lastly brown to the face and top feathers. All of my layers are set to output and therefore will run when I turn the laser on. Over at the laser, I'll lay down my PMag, but notice how the bottom holds up at one end so that it won't be flat. Instead, I'll put a spacer underneath to fix that issue, and then I'll set the laser's focus distance based on the value outlined in the manual. For safety reasons, Lightburn defaults all fiber lasers to framing the drawing on a low power setting when you first hit the start button. As you can see, I prefer to set the framing to wrap the image tightly instead of just a square around its full extent. This allows me to move my material around and adjust its placement to where I'm happy. Then just hit start again and it'll run. And really quickly for PMags too. And there we have it. I think that turned out pretty dang good. And as you can see, with the PMags, it's more of a marking on the surface. There's no real depth or engraving going on here.